Hi, welcome to Astrology for GAN Traders. My name is Olga Morales. First of all, I'd like to welcome you and thank you for investing in ancient knowledge. GAN called astrology the greatest science, and my intention is to immerse and guide you along the path of understanding. You can think of it as learning a foreign language with a new alphabet, symbols, key words, and the more you hear and apply, the easier it becomes. The lessons introduce many new applications, and the benefit of having the slides, you can review them over and over again. Please don't rush through each one without assimilating the information. Remember, the beginner's course sets down the foundation, especially if you ever intend to decode Gan's novel, The Tunnel Through the Air. You'll see that the clues will become more obvious and you'll unveil a whole new level of understanding. Now, I hope you enjoy the journey with me, as I've really enjoyed preparing the slides and the graphics. So let's get started. First of all, my copyright slide. Please respect my intellectual property rights and don't copy or distribute my work illegally. Also, my disclaimer. All the charts and analysis are purely for educational purposes and do not intend to provide trading, advice or recommendations. Now, the only license I have is a driver's license. Also, the software used throughout the presentations are Market Analyst 6, Solify Gold, and Timing Solutions. So let's get started. In the beginning, there was a pyramid. No. Did you know that the pyramid of Giza is aligned with the 4 cardinal points on a compass? This means that its 4 sides point exactly true east, west, north and south. Also, the Great Pyramid is located in the center of the Earth's landmass and was once the zero meridian line running north and south. Now this line is in Greenwich. Point 3 is that the distance around the perimeter of the 4 sides correlates with the circumference of the Earth. How awesome is that? That pyramid is like a cosmic clock, the Earth's sundial. Now, why am I talking about this? Because Gan actually traveled to Egypt and India. He was in search of hidden texts and ancient records. Now, the other thing is that reportedly he found his square of 9 there. And if you look at the square of 9, it's actually a pyramid that's going around. The numbers are going around the pyramid. And it's also called the Pythagorean cube. Now, I believe that, Gan was very much into the esoteric teachings. If you see his books for sale. And I believe that he was also looking for the Hall of Records. Now, the Hall of Records was supposedly the repository for civilization of Atlantis, which sank 10,500 BC. Now, he mentions Atlantis in Tunnel Through the Air, so you can see what Gan's mind was into at the time. Now, there was a person called Edgar Cayce, and he was called the Sleeping Prophet, and he would go into a trance-like state where he spoke about Atlantis, the Sphinx, and Egypt, and there's supposed to be a whole subterranean halls under the whole Giza plateau where the initiations used to happen with these mystery schools, and they kept all the records from Atlantis and all the ancient texts are under there. So there's this huge mystery. If you want to go into that, you can read lots of things. But I just wanted to bring that in. But it's even mentioned in the Bible, in Isaiah 19:19, in the day shall there be an altar to the Lord in the midst of the land of Egypt, and the pillar at the border thereof to the Lord, and it shall be for the sign and for a witness unto the Lord of the host in the land of Egypt. Now, stargazing is so ancient. People just think it's, a few thousand years, but they've actually found Ice Age star maps in France, in some caves in France and Spain. Now, they're dating them back to 16,000 to 14,000 years ago. Now, here's an example of the bull, and this cluster of stars on here is the Palladian star system, which is the 7 sisters, which I've done heaps of research on. I've written articles about. The amazing thing is that this star system is all the indigenous people of countries all over the earth have similar stories about this Palladian star system. Even in Australia, the Aboriginals believe that they come from that star system. So how did that knowledge over these places that are so remotely removed have the same myths and stories? You've got to ask yourself how that happens. Now, this Palladian star system, the central star is called Alcyon, which in Arabic's 2 words is Alcyon, which means the center. It was believed that our whole solar system revolves around this one central star. So there's a lot of things that involved with that star system, and even in Egypt, that the pyramid was apparently one of the shafts was aligned to the culmination of this star system. So there's a whole lot of interesting things you can get into. Now, even in the Bible, the Pallades was mentioned in Job. Now, Job, Gan actually mentions that he's one of the authors in the Bible that is one of the most important. Now, obviously, because of all the astrological references in here. Cast thou bound the sweet influence of Pleiades, or loose the bands of Orion. Cast thou bring forth Mazzaroth in its season, or cast thou guide Arcturus with his sons. Now, there's a thing called the precession, a phenomena called the precession of the equinoxes, which happens because our Earth is actually tilted to 23.5 degrees as it travels around the sun, and the great cycle takes just under 26,000 years. Now, what happens with this is the Earth is like a spinning top, and it wobbles as it goes, it spins around, and the North Star that it points to actually changes over time. And at the moment, we're pointing to Polaris, but around 12,000 BC, it was pointing to Vega. So you can see how all their stars and the way that the ancients are looking at them, they were noticing that this phenomena was changing and their stars were rising at different times, and it's a whole movement. Now, these astrological ages is 1/12 of this great cycle. So one age is the equivalent of 2,160 years, which 12 times you get 25,920 years. Now, as an observer on Earth, the precession is tracked by watching the stars rise before the sun at the spring equinox, which is a vernal point, or the ecliptic. Now, every 72 years, the stars backs up approximately 1 degree along the zodiac. And so they were noticing this change, you see. So, for example, 4,500 BC, the constellation of Taurus was rising at the equinox, and the worship of the bull and the golden calf was dominant. But when we entered into the age of Aries, there was a worship of the ram. And Christianity arose when the vernal equinox entered the sign of Pisces, the fish, around 160 BC. We are currently at the end of this Piscean age, and with the dawning of the age of Aquarius. And Aquarius is a sign of revolution and imagination. So you can see where we get all this symbolism and these ages, and everyone keeps talking about the end of the world, but it's not the end of the world, it's the end of an age. And we move on to the next one, and there's a different energy that comes in. Now, the great year is basically what I've been talking about, and you can see how this thing goes in a retrograde, it goes backwards. So we're currently here at the dawning of the age of Aquarius. Now, astrologers aren't going to tell you that if some say, have we gone into it, have we not gone into it? It's almost 2,000 years, but it actually goes 2,160 years. We're at the tail end of the last Pisces, the last fish, when we're looking at it. So we're dawning it, we're moving into that period. Now, the opposite point was the age of Leo, when the Hall of Records and the Atlantis was supposed to have sunk. And this is, people believe that the Sphinx was actually built after the sinking, and the land settled, and they put it exactly in the center of the Earth mass. So there's a lot you can have a look at that's interesting about all these stories about the past. Now, the 12 zodiac signs, the ancient word for zodiac is zodiakos, meant the circle of animals. It's actually an imaginary belt in the heavens around the celestial sphere, about 18 degrees in width, tilted to an angle of 23.5 degrees relative to the Earth's equator. So there's that shift between the equator and the ecliptic. It is centered on the ecliptic, so called because eclipses can occur along it, which is a projection of the Earth's orbit on this celestial sphere. It passes through the 12 zodiac zodiac constellations, each 30 degrees, and is the apparent pathway along the sun, which the sun moves, and the planets appear to move apart from Pluto, whose orbit is very eccentric. Now, zodiac signs as energy fields, the principle of polarity. The principle of polarity embodies the idea that everything is dual, everything has two poles, and everything has its opposite. All manifested things have two sides, two aspects, or two poles. Everything is and isn't. At the same time, all truths are but half-truths, and every truth is half false. There are two sides to everything. Opposites are identical in nature, yet different in degree. Extremes meet, and all paradoxes may be reconciled. Now, that's from a book called the Kabbalion, which is actually on Gann's reading list. And here again we get this symbol of the yin-yang. Now, the yin-yang comes from the used in the I Ching, and the I Ching was actually to do with 64 hexagrams. Now, this is where it gets really interesting, because Gann's box is 8 by 8, and we get the 64. And part of his something to do a tunnel through the air is the symbol of the 69 on page 69. He talks about the sign of the prophet Jonah, and we get the 69. So there's a lot to do with ancient, even to do with Indian, Chinese, and Vedic, especially the Vedic astrology that, over time has come down to us with these symbols. Now, the number 12. Thus Uriel showed me 12 gates open for the circuit of the chariots of the sun in the heaven, from which the rays of the sun shot forth. This is the book of Enoch. The book of Enoch has a lot of astrological stories in it, or symbolism that was actually taken out of the Bible. So if you want to read that, the book of Enoch, you can get a lot of these astrological references in there. Now, number 12 comes up so many times in the Bible. It's one of the other numbers that comes up, and we get the 12 tribes of Israel, 12 disciples of Jesus, the 12 knights of King Arthur, which is not in the Bible, the 12 labors of Hercules, and the 12 months, which actually means moonths. So each month, the sun and the moon form a conjunction at the new moon. The term moon comes from mooneth. The calendar was established on an agricultural basis, each moon with a specific labor. Even the months of the year are named after, have connotations related to gods and planets. So the names of the months used in most European countries and in North America come to us from the Julian calendar. And Julius Caesar changed the calendar. So January, the first month of the year, is named after the Roman god Janus, who was the two-headed god of beginnings, endings, and gates. February comes from the Latin word meaning to purify. During the last month of the year, the Romans purified themselves to get ready for the festivals of the coming new year. March, the third month of the year, was originally the first month. When Julius Caesar revised the calendar in the 1st century BC, it became the third month. It is named in honor of Mars, the Roman god of war. April, the fourth month, is named after Aprilis, the Latin word for meaning to open. May, the fifth month, is named after Maia, the Roman goddess of spring. June, the seventh month of the year, originally the fifth month, was called Quintilis, meaning fifth. However, Julius Caesar revised the calendar. He named the month after himself. Isn't that nice? August, the eighth month, was named by the Romans after another emperor, Augustus. September, the ninth month of the year, was originally the seventh month. It comes from the Latin word septem, meaning seven. Now, October is the same. The 10th month now was originally the 8th month, and it gets its name from the Latin word for 8. So you can see oct. And November was the 11th month. The 11th month was originally the 9th month. Its name comes from the Latin novem for 9. And December, the 12th month of the year, was originally the 10th month. That's where we get December, or decennial, is a Latin word for 10. So you can see how the calendar's been changed all over, and the months, their orders are different. So this is the challenge when you're trying to decode the Bible. You've got to go back to how it was then, not our months now. It's all been rearranged. So it's an interesting thing that you've got to, all these things that you've got to take into consideration when you're trying to do this research. Now, the days of the week also were named after planets, and we had planetary rulers for each day. So the sun rules the first hour of sun's day. So that's where we get Sunday. The moon rules the first hour of mon, or moon's day. So that's Monday. Mars rules the first hour of Mardi, or Tuesday. Mercury rules the first hour of Mercredi, or Woden, or Wednesday. And in Italian, we call it Mercoledì, which we can see the Mercury in there. Jupiter rules the first hour of Thursday, or Thursday. And in Italian, it's Giovedì, and we get that Jove sound in it. Venus rules the first hour of Friga, or Friday. In Italian, we actually called Friday Venerdì, which comes from Venus and Venerdì. Now, Saturn, the evil planet, opens Saturn's day, or Dies Non, the Sabbath, a day considered by the ancients as evil to begin any work, and consequently became a day of rest. And in Italian, we call it Sabato. It's exactly like Saturn. So you can see where in the ancient world, everything was done with planetary rulers. They would sow their seeds. They would pray at a certain time when there was a proper planetary ruler. It was all focused on these planetary rulers and hours, and nothing was done without knowing this information. Now let's have a look at the zodiac signs. Now this is going to become your new language, and we need to learn all the symbols and what each of the signs, all the keywords for the signs, and this will eventually just become second nature to you. Okay, so we have Aries, the ram, Taurus, the bull, Gemini, the twins, Cancer, the crab, Leo, the lion, you can see his tail there, Virgo, the virgin, Libra, the scales, Scorpio, the scorpion, Sagittarius, the archer, Capricorn, the goat, Aquarius, the water bearer, and Pisces, the fish. Now we're going to go through each of the signs, and we're going to discuss it in terms of the principle of duality and everything having equal and opposite side. So each sign will have a positive and negative expression. And usually we don't see the negative things in ourselves, we only see them in other people. So when I'm going through this list, you're going to probably laugh because you're going to have someone that you know is in the sign, has their sun is in a certain zodiac sign, and all you're going to think is you're going to pick up all the negative side, because that's what we tend to do, and we put judgments on people, and we pretty much deny our own negative side. But people that come into our lives will mirror our negative sides, and that's when we learn about that side of us that's hidden. It's very psychological. So just go with me. I know it might sound a bit boring, but we need to go through this so that you get some keywords, some symbolism, and it becomes your language. So each zodiac sign has a duality, a positive projection when the energy flows in a magnetized state, meaning in a positive state. And on the other side, there's a negative projection, which is demagnetized and unable to flow. So let's start with Aries. Aries is the 21st of March to the 20th of April, and this begins the year. Really, the year always began at the equinox. So, and Aries was the sign when the sun moves into zero Aries. Now, Aries is known to have inspirational, very independent people, assertive, impulsive, headstrong leaders and pioneers. On the negative side, they can be quite aggressive, a me-first approach, selfish, bad-tempered, intolerant and domineering. Okay, Taurus. Taurus is the bull, and we go from the 21st of April to the 22nd of May. Now, Taurus was the sign that when we're talking about the precession of the equinoxes, this was the age of the bull. And a lot of the symbolism of the bull and bullishness, they still celebrated in May, when the time of the bull, with the fertility rites. And the maypole, they used to dance around the maypole. It was very symbolic of the fertility rites that they used to do when the sun was in Taurus. Now, the actual interesting thing about it is that the star system, the Pleiades that I spoke about, is in this whole bull area. And the New York Stock Exchange was founded on the 17th of May, 1792, when the sun was exactly conjunct the main star that I've spoken about, which was Alcyone, which means the center. Now, isn't that amazing? And this is where we get the symbolness of bullishness in May. And on the opposite side, I'm just going to put in another little picture here, is Scorpio. So in November is known as a bearish time when things tend to die. The sign of Scorpio is always associated with death. And this is, as soon as we move into October, November, they used to celebrate like Halloween and All Saints Day and All Souls Day. It was all to do with death, because you've got to think of it symbolically. When the sun starts going lower in the horizon and we get lower and lower, for them, that was death, indicated death. Things that in the earth were not growing anymore. There wasn't enough sunlight. And so this is when we moved into the death phase. And so we get the symbolism of the bear. Now, the bear is not exactly a scorpion, people would say, but we've got to think of it in terms of star systems. Now, when the sun is in Scorpio, there's a constellation called the Great Bear, which is the Big Dipper. Most people know it as. And that can actually be seen to be culminating its highest elevation when the sun is rising in Scorpio. So you can see that would be like high up in the sky, like a northern star on those days. So that's where the symbolism between those periods. And I don't know, you've probably heard of the quote that sell in May and go away, because that was a point where it was that always associated with fertility. Now, in general, Taurines are very determined, dedicated, patient, practical, sensual, dependable, and stable. On the other side, they can be quite restrained, stubborn, plodding, inflexible, materialistic, self-indulgent, and greedy. Okay, let's move on to Gemini, the twins. That's the 23rd of May to the 21st of June. Now, some of these dates might not be exactly what they can change year to year, and it's sometimes a day before and after. People will be born on a cusp and they're not quite sure. So I've just averaged it out, but every year actually changes. And if you actually want to know, if you are born on a cusp and you want to find out exactly what sign your sun is, it might be on 29 degrees of the sign earlier, right on 0. You would need to get an astrologer or somewhere that you can get your actual natal chart for your time to find out exactly what degree your sun is in. Okay, so let's have a look at Gemini. Versatile, inquisitive, friendly, dual personality, adaptable, quick-witted, clever, and multitaskers. Now, they can do so many things at the same time. It's ridiculous sometimes. Now, on the other side, they can be quite restless, inconsistent, superficial, scatterbrained, lack of concentration, and very changeable. Now, if you know a Gemini, they're the type of person that cannot stay in a job for a long time. They need constant new ideas and movement. So they've got to move around, and that's the sign of Gemini, the traveler, ruled by Mercury. He was always on the go. So you'll learn more about this as the lesson progresses. And then we come to Cancer, the crab, which is the 22nd of June to the 22nd of July. This is another point in the seasons, which is either the winter or summer point, depending on what hemisphere you live in. And we have emotional, nurturing, protective, intuitive, domestic, traditional, and sensitive. This is all to do with the home and the crab. And the crab can be like a crab, they like to bury themselves in the sand, and they are quite protective and can be quite shy. And they get easily hurt. They can brood, quite negative, overly cautious, lazy, selfish, and sorry for self. Now, I often do charts for children, and when I see a child born in Cancer, I can sort of tell the parents you're lucky, because usually they love to eat and sleep. They just will sleep for you and they'll eat quite happily. And you've got a very content baby if they're wrapped up and warm. So it's interesting to do children's charts as well, which I love doing. Now we get to Leo, the lion. Main star in Leo that I will speak about too, is Regulus. He was one of the fixed stars, and it was always to do with royalty. The Leo, Regulus, and we get the word regular from Regulus. Okay, there's so many words in our vocabulary that come from the stars and anything associated with the etymology of these stars. So Leo can be proud, generous, loving, confident, demonstrative, dramatic, and romantic. On the other side, they can be quite arrogant, domineering, vain, boastful, pretentious, and status conscious. So Leos like to be, think of the royal person in control in front of everybody. They need an audience. They will demand an audience. So watch the children that are Leos. You'll see them sticking out like a sore thumb. Now, Virgo, the Virgin, 23rd of August to the 22nd of September. And the Virgos are very analytical, inquisitive, precise. They seek perfection, very tidy, attention to detail, organised, and conscientious. I forgot how to say that word. Now they can be quite critical, fussy, melancholy, picky, pedantic, and fears disease. So they can get overly analytical, and it's like it's analysis paralysis with things. And because they put so much effort into analysis, they won't actually produce something because they want it to be so precise. And I think Madonna falls into this sign, and Michael Jackson too. They wanted to be perfect, and they put so much into having that. Now, Libra. Libra is a sign of the scales, and it's all to do with balance. The 23rd of September to the 22nd of October, which again is an equinox point. Equinox come from the term equal, and this is when we have equal day and night on both hemispheres, and everything's sort of balanced at that point. That's why there's a balance. There's two main stars in that star system, and I won't tell you what they're called because it's in Arabic and I can't pronounce it. So let's go to the next one. To Libra. Charming, sociable, diplomatic, helpful, peace-loving, unable to say no, artistic, and refined. And on the other side, they can be quite indecisive, fickle, easily deterred, and apathetic. Now, Librans are known not to be able to make decisions, and they always are trying to balance because that's their sign. They're trying to say, okay, who should I give more bearing to, and how am I going to work this out? It's very hard for them to make a decision because I want to be fair to everybody. So they can sit on the fence in a lot of things, and it's very hard to get a commitment out of them, and that's why people tend to think they're fickle. But on the positive side, they are very charming, and so they're very sociable and very diplomatic, really good to have as friends anyway. Okay, now we come to Scorpio. So this is our death area, and the main star is Antares. Now, Antares actually means anti-Aries, which was anti-Mars, because it was opposite the opposite Aries on the other side, and it was an opposition to Mars. So the 23rd of October to the 21st of November is Scorpio, and they're known to be very intense, passionate, powerful, mysterious, penetrating, probing, and investigative. And on the negative side, they can be quite sarcastic, vengeful, secretive, jealous, suspicious, and violent. Now, one of my students gave me this really funny write-up on the star signs, and under Scorpio, it said that you're more likely to be murdered if you're a Scorpio, because they can get quite intense and jealous. And, think of the underworld. Pluto is the new ruler of Scorpio. It's all to do with the underworld, undermining, like the mafia and, that sort of crime. And so you get, it's quite funny when you have these write-ups on the signs. Now, Sagittarius is the 22nd of November to the 22nd of December, the Archer. And they're very optimistic, spontaneous, curious, philosophical, religious, spiritual religious, adventure-seeking, freedom-loving, scholarly, and athletic. Now, they can also be very extremist, exaggerate, blunt, a gambler, pushy, and hot-headed. Now, because their ruling planet is Jupiter, everything's big for them. They think of big things, and they can actually exaggerate. They get so enthusiastic that they can actually embellish things and exaggerate. Fantastic for salespeople because they've got a way of selling things to anybody. Okay, now we come to Capricorn, the 23rd of December to the 20th of January, and this is either summer or winter period depending on the hemisphere you're in. And they are known to be ambitious, hardworking, responsible, conventional, business-like, practical, economical, and serious. And on the other side, quite selfish, pessimistic, severe, domineering, unforgiving, fatalistic, and inhibited. Now, they like to be their own boss, Capricorns, and they like to be in position of authority, you know, and even if they do work for somebody else, they'd want to be like in a manager's type role and people looking up to them. So they're very much into that authority and business-like attitude. Now we come to Aquarius, the 21st of January to the 19th of February, and they are individuals, humanitarian, quite inventive and radical, progressive, intellectual and independent. They can also be on the negative side quite detached, erratic, cold, eccentric, stubborn, unpredictable and rebellious. Now with Aquarians, they're the ones that come up with new ideas, a different way of of doing things. They don't like to conform to fashion, to anything that's, you know, like trends that are in whatever's happening at the time. They'll always try to break the status quo. They're trying to bring in something new and unique, and they can appear attached. It's very hard to get emotional. It's a mind thing. They don't like to get into the emotions, but they're very good at having around in groups and getting you thinking about different things. Now, Pisces, the last sign, 20th of Feb to the 20th of March, are very sensitive, intuitive, caring, creative, compassionate, musical, artistic, sacrificing and imaginative. Hypersensitive, escapist, dreamers, submissive, pessimistic, procrastinating, impractical. Now, Pisces do get a bit of a bad rap because they can be so emotional and sensitive, but at the same time, if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have beautiful music and beautiful poetry and stories and fantasy novels. They've got that edge to them where they don't live in the sort of ground level. Their head's always above and beyond, thinking of the fantasy and dream worlds. And so, you know, every sign is needed, or every energy is needed on our earth to make it whole. So, you know, we need to encounter these sort of people because that brings up our sensitive side when we meet them. So I hope you like that little quick tour of the signs. Of course, you can go into more depth with any other book, and my aim is just to give you the key words, and then you go into depth with looking through them. Now, what I've done here, obviously our aim is to use this knowledge to then apply it to the stock market. And we're looking at what is called an annual stock cycle in the stocks, which is basically just using the sun. So we've just gone through all the sun signs, and now we can basically plot the same energy on our chart. So here I'm starting with Aries, and I'm going through each month, which is plotted on the bottom part. And then we're just doing, this is a composite, an annual cycle composite, generally trying to get a whole lot of cycles, and again to get a common sort of trend over the whole year. So it's an annual cycle, and you can see that when we go into Taurus and Gemini, there's more of an up peak and then coming down. And this is that old thing, as I said before, you know, sell in May and go away sort of thing. And then towards the month of October, November, which is supposed to be when we go into Scorpio, and Libra, is a time where it becomes more bearish. And so this cycle is actually showing that overall over many periods, and this is based on the S&P. I think it's 33 years of data, but it picks the most dominant annual cycles and plots it on one chart. So, you know, people have got different terms for these, like seasonal charts or annual cycles on stocks, but behind it is if you want to look at it, have the edge, is to have the astrological cycles of what the sun is doing and how it's affecting the actual market. So this is a quote from Gann that I love, from page Tunnel Through the Air on page 78, and it's all about time and how he used to forecast. Time is a great factor that proves all things. The measurement of time first originated is based on the Earth's motion upon its axis. One of the smallest cycles or time factors which repeats regularly in things is that the very active and have a higher vibration is the 4-minute cycle. The reason for this is that the Earth moves 1 degree every 4 minutes. The next cycle is 24 hours, a complete time required for Earth to make 1 revolution upon its axis. Now, the next slide, I'm going to do like an animation to elaborate on this time, so that you can actually understand what's going on a daily basis in the heavens. Okay, let's just have a look at the 4-minute cycle quoted by Gann in this clever little animation tool in Solar Fire. I've cast the chart for the true sun rising time on the 24th of September 2009 at 6:11:12 a.m. set for Melbourne, Australia. Now you have a look, this little symbol here, the circle with the dot, that is actually the symbol of the sun. Now the sun on that day was in 0 Libra 55. It's just moved into a Libran sign, which is called an ingress, and it's one of our seasons, the equinox point. Now this point here, this line across the whole chart, is actually like the horizon, and that's where we get the term horizontal. It comes from the horizon, and it actually goes back to Egypt, to Horus, that I've mentioned earlier before, and he was known to be the sun, because the sun rises at this point. Now the eastern point is the ascendant, or the ascending point, because every day the sun ascends at that point. Now can you see the degree is actually at this point is 0.56, because that's with the sun. So let's have a look. Keep your eye on these degrees. As I animate the chart every 4 minutes, you'll see what happens. That degree will move 1 degree. So every 4 minutes, there's an ascension of 1 degree. And this keeps going. Now, every 24 hours, the zodiac, can you see the zodiac around the outside of the wheel? It appears to be going clockwise, and it's taking all the planets with them. But this is actually just an illusion created by the anti-clockwise rotation of the Earth. So the zodiac is essentially invisible, and it can only be detected by where the planets are at night. I mean, stargazing was at nighttime pastimes, but the fixed stars are not limited to the zodiac. They're scattered all over the sky. However, there are some important fixed stars that line the zodiac, like Antares and Aldebaran and Regulus, and they're known as the royal stars. Now, have a look at what's happening as I'm keep animating the chart. The sun's going higher and higher into the sky, and we know it's reaching its highest point, which is around midday. And once it does that, we actually reach another point in our chart, which is called the midheaven, because that's where the sun is, in the middle of the day, pretty much on a midheaven. You can see that point. This line here is actually called the MC, or the midheaven, and it's around 12 p.m. At midday, and you can see it's reached its highest elevation. So this is the highest point it can reach in the day, and that's why the MC is considered the highest point that we can reach in terms of our own personal development in our charts. Now let's have a look. I'm going to just step up the chart to 1 hour just to quicken it a bit. And what happens after 6 hours, the sun actually moves and it reaches the next angle, which is known as the descendant. This is the western point, the west where the sun sets. And it's called the descender because the sun starts descending here. As soon as it falls below this point, we don't see it anymore, and it's gone. And that's our sunset point. And so it keeps going, and then after 6 hours, it reaches a midnight point. You can see midnight, and this is called the IC. And then we keep going. Again, another 6 hours after that, and the sun will be ascending again. So you can see the 4 points of our chart: ascendant, midheaven, descendant, IC. 4 cardinal points, they're called in our charts, the 4 angles, and that's where the sun rises, culminates, descends, and anti-culminates. So they're the 4 angles that are very important.